White wine is served on Wednesdays. The goal of the music is to create a lovely ambience. As if it were just another frantic live stream evening, Tasha laughs with the community while making jokes about her DJ board, debt, vitamins, Panama, and the celebrity mess. On the surface, everything feels familiar, safe, and light. But something has changed. Her voice becomes tight when you watch the clip. The jokes slow down. Her smile doesn't go away, but her energy shifts from playful to surgical. In the chat, names like Tamar, Funky, Mendeecees, and Yandi are already being used excessively. Since Funky's live performance went viral, everyone has been whispering in group conversations and comments, waiting for her to reveal what. After that, the clip rolls. Funky's face is illuminated on screen by that cold, ruthless flowing light. His remarks sound like a weapon emerging from a sheath, even though he speaks softly. He doesn't yell, he doesn't complain, just let it fall. While you were seated on his lap in that fucking Uber, your ass was kissing. Funky says Tamar gave him a kiss. Mendeecees in the car, sitting on his lap before going upstairs with him and a friend. For a moment, there is silence. Then the internet goes crazy. Timelines of floods with remarks. So it wasn't just a fun birthday party night. Tamar claimed to have woken up in a puddle of blood. Does Yandi's name constantly coming up because of this? Suddenly, screenshots of Tamar's own post about waking up wounded, losing teeth, and forgetting what happened are sewn alongside Funky's allegations and Tasha's live response. They replay the timestamps. There is a rewind in the body language, and the times when giggling becomes uncomfortable are frozen. On her set, Tasha reclines in her chair. She narrowed her eyes as though she were staring at a crime board that only she could see. For her, this is more than just untidy rumors. It's inspiration. It's a chronology. It serves as an alibi. She's also ready to recite the quiet portion out loud this evening. The seemingly harmless evenings spent with Mendeecees might have been influenced by Tamar's own remarks. The only question is what's left of that evening when the commercials, jokes, and chaos are taken out. The moment the hook disappears, the mood dramatically changes. The tension that fills the room before anyone speaks suddenly changes from interest. Since the audience isn't only reviewing Tamar's interview, QBQ was searching for the parts they didn't know were missing. Her interview seems harmless at first. The lighting is tidy, the tone is serene, and there is a faint sense of vulnerability but no real concern. She talks about how she felt pained when she awoke, how she didn't understand what had happened, and how she felt fear instead of clarity. At first sight, it appears genuine, but those components now feel different. Her voice is steady, her delivery is effortless, and she skirts the crucial passages. She says she was confused. She says she was drunk. She says she doesn't remember. She can still vividly remember one thing. She hosted a birthday celebration. That one specific fact is at the center of everything she recounts about what happened before things went wrong. Her evenings become more structured as a result. Goal: a compassionate intention that conveys her helpfulness, generosity, and innocence. But according to Funky, that moment never occurred. She didn't organize any celebrations, a plan, or a gesture. She simply contacted him because she needed a place to go, and he happened to be available. That contrast completely alters the tone of her rendition. The distinction between a simple question and a contemplative moment. It makes people reconsider the rest of her story. Everything that followed would also seem to have a different importance if what she stated wasn't the reason for the evening. Viewers, notice how easily she avoids talking about the framework of the evening when they rewatch her interview. She talks about feelings, but not the chronology. She remembers this, but not movement. She can recall the precise moment she woke up, but she is unable to name the persons who were in her near surroundings. As she communicates emotion without context, the audience begins to question whether the perplexity she portrayed was the result of selective storytelling or memory loss. And there's Funky. His narrative is more spatial than emotional. It portrays motion in the real world, including where they went, who was there, the group's behavior, and the reasons he felt uneasy. He remembers her call. He remembers the original place. He remembers the desire to continue the evening. He remembers the group dynamic evolving into something he didn't entirely comprehend. His memory forges a path through the incident based on details she never disclosed. There is one variant that floats even when goals aren't stated. The others walk. An overview is given in one version. The others disassemble. Names are avoided. Inadvertently, the other shows off their combined weight. The more people watch Tamar's interview, the more they realize how deftly she avoids other people's involvement. As she talks about herself and Funky, the people who were physically closest to her that night seem to disappear from her story. The patrons of the eatery are not mentioned by her. She doesn't mention who accompanied her to the following location. She doesn't mention who helped her, who sat next to her, or who remained close enough for Funky to sense a shift in atmosphere, not because she is lying, but rather because she narrows the frame so tightly that the rest of the night is hidden. making absence a kind of hint unto itself. As more people watch, Tamar's.com explanation begins to take on a new meaning. Compare the two variants. Not dishonest, but defensive. Not deceitful, but deficient. When Funky describes how the group is urging him to continue, the story's tone changes once more. Tamar claimed that the evening appeared spontaneous and unprepared, as though it had eluded her. Nevertheless, his narrative depicts a night when momentum choices were taken. Energy was flowing and paths were being pushed towards something he didn't want to participate in and wasn't aware of. The contrast between their tones, which, like someone describing a fog, is the main source of tension. She tells her tale. He characterizes himself as someone who walked into a room full with messages that he didn't completely understand until much later. People begin to accept his discomfort because it is one of the most genuine emotions. It's an emotion that you don't produce. It arises out of nowhere, sticks in your memory, and then reappears years later when an answer is discovered. His voice carries that weight. Unresolved raw pressure, not anger or retaliation. At that, viewers realize that what happened at the conclusion of the evening is not the main focus of the plot. It revolves around the interim, the hours that expand in his narrative and vanish in hers, and the choices she never raises. The dynamics and the people she left out were too much for him to overlook. The presence he had not yet been able to understand. Her quiet is the most fascinating part of her story. Not because being suspicious, silent, but because silence always has a shape. Now everyone is aware of the exact shape that Funky's version avoids. Tamar's poise becomes more of a question than an answer because of her time frame, because of her conviction in certain areas, ambiguity in others, ease with emotive storytelling, and hesitancy with structural reality. People now see her entire life through a different prism the more closely both versions are examined. When the crowd had no one is doubting if Tamar remembered the night after seeing her interview once more. But why did she only remember the specifics that hid the rest of the picture? When Tamar's version falters, the audience entirely turns their attention to Funky's story. This isn't because Funky gave it confidently, or rather, because he did. Thus, with the kind of emotional exhaustion that only results from accepting accountability for an act you did not commit. Additionally, even though they were trying not to, viewers become conscious that they are hearing the perspective of someone who is actually paying attention. He makes it clear that he was hesitant to go out as soon as he starts giving a systematic, step-by-step account of the evening. There was no party atmosphere about him. He had nothing to rejoice over. Prior to Tamar, he was at home when he called to request a location to eat. It wasn't sentimental at all. There was no intention and nothing occurred. It was only an opportune time, which he later turned into something far more important than it was. As he speaks, viewers can also sense that he is hesitant to join the group. His tone gives the impression that he replied yes out of habit rather than desire. Someone who knew he shouldn't have been there as he entered the night and was wobbly on his feet. He describes how she and her companions gently but firmly moved him from one area to another, forcing him into places he didn't want to be. At the moment, he could not explain the draw of the night. However, it now appears less random and more deliberate. The audience begins to realize that Funky recounts the incident as if he were following a path he had spent years learning by heart. However, Tamar characterizes it as unclear and fragmented. He remembers the first place since he wasn't excited to go. He recalls the second because he was coerced into it. He remembers the third because something inside of him told him he should have left sooner. The third because something inside of him told him he should have left sooner. His chronology is cautious rather than spectacular, perceptive rather than emotive, introspective rather than accusing. Every part is carried with a sense of exhaustion, which makes it convincing. Things start to alter when he tells about the moment he saw Mendeecees come, makes no significant announcements. He compares it to a puzzle piece that all of a sudden made sense of the tension he had been feeling since the evening had begun. It wasn't a coincidence, didn't seem spontaneous. It appeared to be planned. For her, not for him or the others. The internet picks this up right away. Why would Tamar ignore someone who was so vital to its vitality if she truly didn't remember that evening? Her interview suggests that she didn't engage in much social interaction, but Funky's memory paints a different picture. One where she was socially active, fully aware, moving with intention, and conversing with people she never acknowledged in public. Among the group, there was no straying. What they were circling was never mentioned by her. Viewers begin to reevaluate anything she said as harmless ambiguity. At this point, her silence around the people she was closest to that evening begins to seem like a deliberate action, protective rather than malicious. She appeared to be trying to safeguard the relationships as well as herself. She didn't want you to be associated with the world. Chaos. The following morning, the gang insisted that he join them somewhere else, and Funky remembers the tension in the room. He remembers feeling outnumbered, but not in a dangerous way. Instead, he felt that he wasn't the main focus of the plans. He felt as though he was being drawn into a night that had started long before he arrived. Viewers begin to experience a sense of displacement. Displaced people watch everything, They study energy. They are experiencing tension. They learn things that the participants are too comfortable to notice because he was not included in the triangle of emotions. His description is so potent because he was able to see it from the outside. As he recounts the changes between sites, he unknowingly reads the room. Something that Tamar failed to say throughout the conversation begins to catch the attention of viewers. She never describes the movement of the night. She never provides an explanation for how they relocated. She never discloses who was nearby or how close they were. She depicts the night as a barren realm where things happen without any human interaction. But in Funky's story, people are everywhere, moving, talking, and exchanging sincere looks. And there is one individual among them whose presence changes everything. His memory gets more acute when he reflects about the vehicle ride. Not because of the kiss yet, but more because of the way the car's ambience conveyed something. He was unable to unseat, seats are being moved, people hunched over each other, quiet conversations, subtle body language shifts that weren't suitable for a relaxed night out. According to Funky, she seemed to have total control over the evening, choosing companions, groups, and maneuvers. Tamar, on the other hand, characterizes it as something she lost control over. And this distinction directly affects the central theme of the story. One woman says she doesn't remember anything. One man says he remembers everything he wishes he hadn't. When the internet takes into consideration both accounts, Tamar's chosen adjectives begin to feel intentional. She draws attention to her moments of compassion while omitting details that would require explanation, like who she was with, how she behaved, and what her interactions revealed. Meanwhile, Funky's fatigue increases. His voice breaks with remorse at being dragged through a scenario in which he was not involved. Rather than rage, the audience can see how long he was held responsible for a night he tried to flee. For what duration did he refrain from defending himself? How long did he keep quiet while others portrayed him as careless, callous, or heartless? Because of this emotional exhaustion, viewers feel that Tamar's interview lacked motivation. Why would she demolish the structure at night? Why would she leave out names? Why would she make the events so difficult to see? To be truthful, to simplify things, to stay secure, and to deflect attention from the one thing she didn't want. Scrutinize the firmness she upheld. The image is clearer for viewers. Funky had no intention of leaving the celebration by the time he reaches the point in the evening when he decides to leave the gathering. It was fleeing from an energy he couldn't understand, and that wasn't his. An energy that, after his confession, the internet now recognizes with new clarity. The evening was an emotional disaster. According to Tamar, it was a planned evening. According to Funky, but it became something she never intended to convey. The audience begins to realize that neither of their claims is false. It is hidden within the things she shunned and what he finally admitted as these two stories hang in the air, unresolved and heavy. Perplexity on one side and his caution on the other could still be parallel stories up to this point. Or everything changes when Funky finally gets to the back seat, which Tamar never mentioned. But like two trains on different tracks, the reports begin to diverge. He describes the cars inside as strangely intimate rather than raucous or chaotic as soon as he remembers it. A degree of closeness inappropriate for a casual night out. The type of closeness that sharpens the intuition of an outsider, even if they are not yet conscious of their emotions. He remembers where everyone was seated. He remembers the sudden quiet. He remembers how the illumination caught motions that people thought no one observed. Then he discloses the one element that permeates Tamar's whole narrative and for which the audience was unprepared. She wasn't distant. She wasn't confused. She was not flickering between states of consciousness. She actively participated in making decisions and was completely present. The crowd falls silent when he gets to the point where she is getting closer to not the dramatic recounting or the exaggerated version the internet made, but a peaceful story of two people acting as though they didn't think anyone was watching. He avoids exaggeration so that viewers can feel its weight. He just talks about what he saw. Tamar's carefully prepared interview abruptly begins to vary in every way. She remembered the drama, she remembered the pain. When she woke up, she remembered being hurt. But throughout the entire event, she couldn't remember the one person, Funky says, was closest to her. This absence turns into a crucial moment for the viewers. Whether something happened or not is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with guilt or innocence. It has to do with omission. Funky claimed that the silence surrounding a presence changed the evening's trajectory. When he mentions the physical closeness between her and Mendeecees, viewers shift in their seats. It is not the scandal that is the cause, but rather the emotional gap. Tamar described herself as lonely and vulnerable. Funky claims that she feels surrounded, particularly by someone she did not include in her explanation. As a result, the narrative breaks apart. Her story is shaped by her loss of control. His decision to leave has also influenced his conflicting strategies for self-preservation. But the car ride is about more than love or suspicion. Relates to timing, because Funky continues to describe the night in excruciating detail. After that, however, Tamar's collapses against a blank wall. He remembers arriving at her house. He remembers the group departing. He remembers feeling the air change again, a faint indication that something unsaid was guiding the night. The information that sends the internet into a frenzy is then revealed by him. He didn't go upstairs not because he was irresponsible, not because he didn't care, but he could read the surroundings with perhaps because of the chemistry between Tamar and Mendeecees, which made him feel unnecessary and possibly undesired. Based on their body language, they didn't seem to want to witness whatever they were entering, and that was the foundation for everything that followed. Tamar's story revolved around a single choice, going and waking up on her own. Funky's defense revolved around leaving the house. Attached to the same instant are two anchors with quite different facts. When he tells who she went upstairs with, the narrative takes an irrevocable turn. The internet begins dissecting every facet of Tamar's interview, searching for omissions rather than fabrications. Why didn't she mention the attendees? Why did she say it was a lonely night? Why did Funky leave a blank spot when she says the story becomes clear? Her thoughtful, as opposed to loud, stillness is the most intriguing feature. It is delicate and painstakingly created to preserve the image of a night destroyed by a single incident, rather than being sculpted by human dynamics. However, Funky doesn't sound like someone out for revenge. His tone is almost forlorn, as if he's tired of hiding story details that have been hurting him for far longer than the audience realized. He talks as if he wishes he didn't have to reveal any of this. However, he is compelled to do so by his guilt. And because Tamar was offended when she spoke, that sensitivity becomes a kind of independent proof. Funky also spoke under pressure. Emotions collide. Two tales collide. Narratives clash. As he tells about the time he drove away, viewers quickly understand why he had such a clear memory of the evening. He left before everything collapsed. Clear memory of the evening. He left before everything collapsed. He saw the final glimpse of the evening. He looked away from the threshold she had crossed, which she later claimed she couldn't see. It isn't proof of anything, though. It is not evidence of wrongdoing. Only one of them can reconcile because their stories vary so drastically at this point. They didn't try either. By the time he finishes his description of the car and the doorway, the internet no longer views the situation as complicated. To them, it seems unfair. Her story conceals the people who stood by her side. His story highlights the people who supported her but were removed from her timeline just hours before the fall. The exact hour that everything changed is marked on his timeline. Her quiet protects someone. His cough exposes someone. Somewhere, in that imbalance, you are the reality that neither of them wants to accept. Until the following morning, nothing truly breaks. It's not because the internet reacts or Tamar wakes up in agony, but rather because the distance between her and his versions keeps growing. Someone asks a question that neither of them wants to answer. There is a lot of emotion in her explanation. He is exhausted when he comes. The contrast between the two appears intentional, even if neither of them planned it. She discusses pain, confusion, and the terrifying dot. She talks about how she felt hurt and alone when she woke up. She talks about not knowing what or how it happened, but she never talks about the hours leading up to that point. The people who remain by her side, the change in the group's atmosphere, or the man whose presence she completely omitted when recalling the event. Every time she leaves out a detail, the stillness becomes more intense. But Funky's memory never wavers. He is reminded of everything he wishes he could forget. He remembers the changes in location, the feeling of being coerced into a night he didn't want, the sudden shift in mood when Mondays showed up, and the intimacy he experienced long before anyone noticed. Instead of exposing, he speaks as if he has been rehearsing this moment in private for months in order to survive. And viewers begin to observe something that changes the tone of everything. Her story is shaped by the aftermath. His narrative is shaped by observation. Her story begins with the injury. His story is never told there, and that gap is where the real tension is found. As he left the doorway, he claims to have felt the weight of someone who was unaware of the importance of what he was leaving behind. He didn't run away. He didn't simply leave. He simply pulled away from a dynamic that did not suit him. And that decision, the quiet withdrawal into the night, is now central to both tales. Because everything that Tamar went on to detail is now uncertain. Enjoy the room's size, which she never wants to return to in public after he admits that he departed. Who went up the stairs with her? Who helped her inside? Who stayed? Who didn't? Whose presence mattered in those final hours? She doesn't say anything. She doesn't even hint at it. And that silence starts to stand in the way. To protect a connection she didn't want to be publicized. Not to lie. A connection she couldn't openly connect to the mayhem of the following morning. She didn't want this presence to be connected to her bewilderment or wounds. Conversely, Funky carries the opposite weight. Defense is not necessary for him. He must participate. With each word he speaks, he strives to escape a narrative he didn't pick. Every justification is an attempt to stop being the online villain for something he didn't see. Before he said a word to defend himself, he talks of being accused of crimes he was physically incapable of doing. He says he has read thousands of comments from people who have already criticized him. In addition, The pain in his voice seems more like betrayal than fury. But according to Tamar's experience, she didn't say anything. She didn't accuse him directly. She didn't defend him either. She let the internet fill in the details. Blanks might be dangerous as well. As a result, is when he describes appealing with her in private to clarify that he wasn't involved, his voice breaks. She deleted it after doing so. That elimination ignites a new fire, since it demonstrates hesitation rather than guilt. If a clarification was accurate, why remove it? If it wasn't, why change the story? If clearing things up was important, why let thousands of people believe the erroneous thing? There is no response. At this point, her words start to be overshadowed by her omissions. Every detail she stays away from gets louder. Every void in her narrative raises suspicions. Every missing name has a story to tell. Meanwhile, Funky's narrative gets more painful when he admits that, he didn't want their friendship to end this way. Despite everything, he didn't want to be coerced into this role. He didn't want to share any information about the evening that wasn't his, but there was no way for him to avoid her silence, at least not one that would have protected his reputation. The audience cannot ignore the unexpected turn of events that results from his weakness. She speaks concerning trauma. He is under pressure when he speaks. Furthermore, the same world is revealed by both perspectives. That evening, there was another individual participating. There was another essential person. Someone else shaped the energy she won't explain. The internet begins assembling timelines, comparing his answers to her reactions, and looking for pauses. Neither of them goes over the edge entirely. In a couple of hours, the story no longer belongs to any of them when reading between the lines. It becomes a public investigation. People question why. She described the night as lonely, even though he said she was surrounded. Why did he stress control and confusion? She emphasized. How come she didn't recall anything, but he did? She positioned herself in the center. So why did he draw away? Most importantly, why did Mendeecees occur so often in his memories, but not in her story? That omission, the unnamed, unspoken fact that both of them orbit, is the source of the basic conflict. He doesn't accuse her of anything. She doesn't accuse him of lying. But the stories don't make sense, no matter how hard they try. It's like looking at two halves of a picture that represent different scenes. It is also felt by the general people. The audience became increasingly aware that the dynamics before to the injury and the chaos were the underlying tale as they dug deeper. She hid the conversations. The times, he observed, he could not express how uncomfortable it was. The relationship was never acknowledged by her. As a result, when he finally falters and claims that someone else, someone completely unrelated to their dispute, was emotionally damaged by everything, the internet stops breathing. The name resembles a shadow suspended in space. Suddenly, Funky and Tamar are no longer the story's main focus. The ripple impact of the night will not be sufficiently captured by either. The tension remains, it extends, it lingers. In the end, what they say doesn't hide the truth, so it seeps into the topics they won't talk about. It's hidden among the items. They both refuse to elaborate. As the two stories develop, the audience also begins to realize that neither Tamar nor Funky are disclosing everything they know. Side by side, both of them are on the verge of realities that are too painful to disclose. It's not because they're lying. A soft, watchful calm permeates her pauses. The weight of things he hasn't yet addressed in public has left him looking ragged. Furthermore, the spaces between their remarks begin to reveal more information than the words themselves. Instead of focusing on what Tamar said, people begin to revisit her interview to look at what she evaded. She talks about waking up on her own, but she never discusses the moments before going to sleep. She draws attention to anxiety, but never identifies its source. The way she makes references to chaos, but never identifies those nearby as yet doing so might expose something she isn't prepared to deal with. Her omissions begin to seem intentional rather than dishonest. For the broader public, the natural defense mechanism of someone who knows the truth is too intricate, too personal, or too chaotic. In contrast, Funky's version becomes more intense each time he claims to have fled. The simplicity of that moment turning around, walking away, and walking down the hallway becomes an unsettling emotional time because Tamar was never able to see or enter the reality in which everything he went on to describe took place. The idea that he was held responsible for something that happened in the unseen world is the main source of his suffering. Her experience is not questioned by him. It's his part in the story. The story she crafted was the one that the internet embraced. He had to analyze the narrative piece in order to repair his own reputation by piece. And the audience begins to notice the imbalance. At first, the stage belonged to her. The harm was later inherited. When she spoke, her tone was empathetic. The unconscious emotional advantage she possessed becomes the phantom that looms over every recounting, and he spoke with a survival mindset. As more viewers return to Funky's livestream, they begin to see subtleties that they initially overlooked. He trembles a little as he talks about reading thousands of comments that accuse him. He takes a breath and says she never defended him. His tone cracks as he describes how he spent evenings reliving a timeline he had no control over while watching her online. Grinning, commenting, and chatting. It doesn't sound angry at all. Grinning, commenting, and chatting. It doesn't sound angry at all.